Hey, what is going on, guys? It's DK back at you with another video here to break down the Saturday NFL main slate. Yep, we got the Saturday main slate. I said the Sunday main slate. We still have some games on Sunday, but this is going to be the big one. We got 10 games here. So if you guys are new, I do cover content for Draftkings and Prize Picks. If you guys are not familiar with Prize Picks, they're the sponsor of the video. It is a player prop site where you build 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 6 player props and win up to 25 extra money. All the different sports they have listed are at the top. You can mix and match. So if you guys want to give it a try, you can use the code DKDFS for a 100% match up to $100. And if you're looking for more in-depth content for DFS or for Prize Picks, you can check out my Patreon. That is linked down below. Let's go. We'll keep the same format here. We'll go team by team. Talk about the players of interest in for different formats. And yeah, so let's start off with Houston and Tennessee. And one thing to mention too, I guess, for this main slate is obviously weather is going to be concerned for a decent amount of these games. A lot of very low total games. You just take a look at the Vegas odds. You can scroll through, but like a lot of games sub 40, which is not great. Like the game tonight is at 36. You got Falcons, Ravens at 35, 39.5 for Bills, Bears, 35.5 for Texans, Titans, 32 for Saints, Browns. So ugly one. But yeah, so let's start off with Houston and Tennessee. On the Houston side, no interest in either quarterback. They've been splitting kind of the quarterback duties, so I'll be staying away there. Running back, I'm probably going to be staying away from 2 without Dameon Pierce. Expect, 3 running backs to see carries, so not for me. Wide receiver, looks like Brandon Cooks will be back in this game. Probably going to prefer some other wide receivers, but he'll be operating as a wide receiver 1. Sounds like Nico Collins won't play, so Chris Moore should be wide receiver 2. 11 and 9 targets over the last couple weeks, but I expect those to go down a bit with Brandon Cooks back. And I don't think I'm going to be messing with their tight end situation. They just mix and match a lot of these guys, so no thank you there. Quarterback, Malik Willis is going to be starting. Tannehill out for the season. Willis is a guy that does have some rushing upside, but probably not going to go there in this slate. Running back, Derrick Henry expected to be one of the more popular plays in the slate, and I understand why. A game they should be playing from ahead. No Ryan Tannehill. They're probably going to lean on the ground game even more, so Henry makes for a great play in both formats. I do think he'll probably be a little bit over-owned in tournaments, but still got to like his upside here. Wide receivers, Tennessee is kind of gross with wide receivers. And again, with Malik Willis starting at quarterback, it's probably going to be a full fade for me as well as for the tight end. So mainly just looking to Derrick Henry there. For Atlanta, not much interest here either. Desmond Ridder going to be the starting quarterback. He was not great in his first start. Now, he is a guy that does have some rushing upside, but I just don't think I can stomach it on this slate. Running backs, they're going to utilize 2 at least here with Cordarrelle and Tyler Algier. I think there's better running back plays on this slate. Wide receiver, again, if I had to pick one, it would be Drake London. He did have 11 targets last week, so he'd probably be the one guy to consider. I'm not going to mess with like Michael Pruitt or Parker Hesse. I'm not doing it. So basically just Drake London that I have some interest in. Now on the Baltimore side, they're going to be starting Tyler Huntley at quarterback. And Huntley is a cheap quarterback. I do have a little bit of interest in. I like the matchup here against Atlanta. He's not been great over the last couple games, but we've seen some decent performance from him when Lamar Jackson's has been out throughout last couple of years. So a little bit of the cheap quarterbacks we've talked about so far, he's probably my favorite. Running backs, I have some interest in Dobbins, some interest in Gus Edwards in tournaments. The issue is they're going to utilize like 3-4 backs, and Dobbins has been very efficient in his touches. 15 and 13 carries, 2 games over 100 plus yards. I don't think we can expect that to continue on those limited touches. So he's playable, but probably will be a little bit over-owned. And then again, Edwards should get mixed in. They'll probably give a couple other running backs some carries. Wide receiver for Baltimore, not a ton of interest here. Duvernay's on the IR. Demarcus Robinson probably operating as the wide receiver 1, which is really disgusting. We'll see. Sean Jackson could see an increase in snaps. Maybe James Prochet becomes playable, but it's pretty gross there. At tight end, Mark Andrews at 5.5. I do think he's a viable tournament play. I don't think a lot of people get to him. He's been, bad of late, but still a guy that can put up big performances even with the back quarterback playing. So a little bit of interest in him for tournaments. Moving on to Detroit and Carolina. Jared Goff, a fine value play at quarterback. A team that does like to pass the ball. 41, 39, 38 pass attempts over the last 3 games. So a little bit of interest in Jared Goff. Running backs is hard to trust anyone. They're utilizing 3 guys right now with Swift, Williams, and Jackson. I mean, I think the ceiling is the highest on DeAndre Swift. He had 8 carries and 5 catches and 9 targets. But right now, when they're utilizing it's a 3-headed monster, yeah, hard to prioritize anyone. Wide receiver, I do like Amon-Ra St. Brown, both formats. I think he's going to be a pretty popular play in cash game. But yeah, he's just their clear wide receiver 1. He's going to get double-digit targets most likely. So he looks really, really good. Those the rest of the Lions wide receivers. I mean, DJ Chark's still seeing a decent amount of snaps. He didn't do much of them last week. I mean, rookie Jameson Williams, they really have not been giving him much work. So until we see that those snaps go up, I don't think I can do it. Probably not going to mess with Brock Wright at tight end. I know he had that late touchdown catch, but he hasn't really been super involved in the passing game. Carolina, I'll pass on Sam Darnold. Running back should be a split with Foreman and Hubbard. Both are playable in tournaments. Wide receiver, I mean, I think DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall are viable. It's a decent spot for them. Moore's the go-to guy, but Marshall's still seeing a good amount of snaps. So those guys are playable. I wouldn't feel super confident either. And then I'm not going to get to either tight end. Buffalo and Chicago. So projected to be a low total game, but this Bills offense, I mean, everyone told me you couldn't play Josh Allen last week because of the snow, and Josh Allen went for 39 fantasy points. So, I mean, you can play Josh Allen every single week. A guy that, again, rushing upside, just very high floor, high ceiling. He's playable in both formats, in my opinion. Running back, so Devin Singletary did see a snap increase after basically being a split with James Cook over the last couple of weeks. I think he's a playable contrarian running back play. I would prefer him to James Cook at a similar price point. Wide receiver, I mean, Stephon Diggs, viable in GPPs. I think some other wide receivers at a similar price point will get more ownership. Diggs has been a little bit quiet of late. You can look to Gabe Davis in tournaments as well. I probably can't get to anyone else. I mean, Cole Beasley played. I think he takes some snaps away from Isaiah McKenzie. Tight end Dawson Knox is 4.1K. His role has increased over the last couple weeks. 7 and 8 targets, a touchdown in each one of those. Playable tight end, but I think there's other tight ends in that range I would rather get to. Moving on to Chicago, Justin Fields is 7.5. I mean, I think he's a viable GPP quarterback play just because of this rushing upside, right? I don't think a lot of people play him, but Justin Fields can go get you 100 yards in the ground. And if he does anything through the air, then yeah, I don't mind him in tournaments, even with a low total. Keep an eye on Khalil Herbert news. If he's back, I'm going to stay away from David Montgomery. If he's out still, then we can look to David Montgomery at 6.5, who should play majority of the game. Wide receivers, I mean, Claypool's doubtful. I mean, the wide receivers are really, really cheap. You got Dante Pettis at 3.2K. You got Byron Pringle at 3.1K. I mean, I'm Aquimius St. Brown is out too. No Mooney. If you want to take a shot on one of these cheap Bears wide receivers, you can in tournaments. There's no one that stands out to me. I think that the pass catcher feel the best spot probably would be Cole Kmet, but he's not super cheap there at 4.4. New Orleans and Cleveland, so I'm going to be completely staying away from the passing attack in this game. Projected to be really windy, bad weather. I think Kamara is a playable tournament play. My issue is, I like Kamara in games where I think he's being involved in the passing game. I just don't think they're going to air it out a ton. Now, he did have 21 carries last week for 91 yards, and he's been disappointing of late. So I do have some interest in him. It's also a good matchup. Again, I'll be personally staying away from the wide receivers, the passing game in this game. Same thing with Cleveland. I'm going to be staying away from the passing game. Nick Chubb, I think, is playable in GPPs. I don't think he's going to be super popular. There's some other guys at the top. McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. I think Saquon and Cook get some ownership, where Chubb probably is going to be relatively low on, and he's touchdown dependent. But in games where he falls into the end zone, he can definitely get you there, right? So a little bit interest in Chubb there for tournaments. Again, no interest in the passing game for me. Now we get to a game that I think is pretty appealing. Seattle and Kansas City. This is one of my favorite games to target. If you guys have been following my Patreon content all year too, I stack the Chiefs almost every single week. And for majority of the weeks, it's paid off for me because every single time I go to the Chiefs stack, it's low on because it's hard to make it work. But for majority of the time, I mean, it's Pat Mahomes. So we'll get to that. But this game looks really appealing. I think Geno Smith makes for a really good play in both formats. Definitely one of the top cheap quarterback plays on the slate, in my opinion. A game they should be playing from behind. And he's cheap. So I really do like Geno Smith. Running back, keep an eye on Ken Walker. I expect him to play. If not, then we probably look to Travis Homer. But I expect Walker to play. He is a bit involved in the passing game. He's at a reasonable price point at 6.4, so do have interest in some Ken Walker. Wide receiver, so no Tyler Lockett. I expect Marquise Goodwin to be operating as the wide receiver too. But yeah, DK Metcalf should be the clear go-to guy. I like him in both formats in game. They should be playing from behind. Goodwin should be operating as the wide receiver too. I think he sees a snap increase. I like him in both formats. Wide receiver 3, so I think it's going to be Laquan Treadwell if we just look at the snaps. He played 29 snaps as opposed to Young and Hart playing 2 snaps each. So I think Treadwell will be operating as wide receiver 3. If you wanted that like dart throw in tournaments, I don't hate. If you need a min-price wide receiver, a little bit of interest in Laquan Treadwell if he in fact is going to be the wide receiver 3 in this game. Then the Kansas City side, so yeah, I like Mahomes in both formats. Again, it's just the massive ceiling he presents every single week. So relatively high floor too. This is one of the higher total games of the week. I like him in both formats. Running back. So maybe this is a hot take. I think Jerick McKinnon is fish food at his ownership. Right now, projected to be one of the higher owned running backs on the slate. I'm just not going to do it. I know he's been great over the last couple of weeks, but he's got extremely lucky with touchdown variance. I don't think he's going to continue to average 8 to 9 targets a game. And you're still seeing Isaiah Pacheco seeing a lot of snaps and a lot of carries. So when you have a split backfield and a guy that has overperformed over the last couple of weeks, and with him coming in at high ownership, I'll be full fading. If he falls into the end zone multiple times again, I'll just be on full tilt mode on Twitter. Wide receiver. So I like Juju Smith-Schuster in both formats, 11 and 10 targets over the last couple of weeks. He's the clear top wide receiver. So like him, Kadarius Toney is back. I have no idea what we're going to see from him snap-wise. I would guess they ease him into it, but if you want to take a shot on him for tournaments, you can. If you want to take a shot on MVS for tournaments, you can, but it's mainly Juju I've interested in. And then I like Travis Kelce in GPPs because it's hard to get him in there, right? If you play Mahomes, if you play Travis Kelce, it's going to be tough to round out your lineup. So he's going to be low-owned for that reason, but sign me up for a low-owned Travis Kelce at 8K. So yeah, I like this Chiefs passing attack a lot. All right, the Giants and Minnesota Vikings. This is another appealing game. One of the few games that we don't have to worry about weather. Daniel Jones at 5'6" is a playable cheap quarterback. I think I prefer Geno Smith, but a guy that does have some rushing upside going up against one of the worst defenses in the league. I think he's definitely in play. I like Saquon in both formats as well. Played him at, I was surprised how low owned he was last week in the showdown slate. He was like 40%. He smashed. He's just a guy that went in a competitive game. He's going to be like a bell cow back. He had 18 carries, 5 catches, and 8 targets. And this is, again, one of the best possible spots against Minnesota. I think Saquon's a good play in both formats. And I like the cheap wide receivers here for the Giants a lot, too. So, kind of scary, but I really like the Giants this week. I think Slayton, Hodgins, and Richie James are all good plays. I think Hodgins and Richie James are 2 of the best value wide receivers on the board. Richie James is going to play a majority of the game in the slot. 9 and 5 targets over the last couple weeks. Isaiah Hodgins running a ton of routes, seeing a fair amount of targets. And then Darius Slayton, probably the guy with the highest ceiling, but he's also the most expensive. So I like all 3 Giants wide receivers. I think Daniel Bellinger's a fair punt play. I think there's other tight ends I'd rather get to, but he's also viable as well. So Giants are a team I really like, and the Vikings are a team I like. The Giants are not a great defense. So this is I think this might be the highest total game of the week. Kirk Cousins, obviously you saw what happened last week. Just an insane game, but I always say it's about the Vikings. Condensed target share. Like when Kirk Cousins is throwing the ball, you know where it's going. Now, we kind of saw an outlier last week with the big game from KJ Osborne. I do not expect that again. So I have interest in Kirk Cousins in both formats, and I like Dalvin Cook. I'm not tilted one bit when I played him here against Detroit. He went for 15 carries for 23 yards. The next game goes for 30 fantasy points. Like, come on, man. You can't do that to me. But Cook, even though I think he's not the best running back, like he just like runs 3 yards in a cloud of dust every single play, he's getting a majority of the carries. He is involved in the passing game, and the Giants are not a good defense. I like Dalvin Cook in both formats. I think these wide receivers look pretty good. Justin Jefferson, totally in play in both formats, just insane target share every single week. Adam Thielen at 5'3", had a kind of a quiet week, but did fall into the end zone. He's playable in the mid-range. I think Osborne's fine. I think he'll be a bit overowned, though. Like 16 targets for KJ Osborne is a little bit out of this world. He's been averaging like 4 or 5 targets a game, so I think he's someone I'll probably fade. And then at tight end, TJ Hawkinson was also a bit quiet, did have 9 targets. Like, I would rather play TJ Hawkinson every single day of the week over KJ Osborne at a similar price point. All right, a few games left here. We got Cincinnati and New England. On the Cincinnati side, Burrow, a playable tournament play. The Cincinnati passing offense, probably not going to be super popular. Joe Mixon, 6'9". I don't love the price point. I mean, he is involved in the passing game, but Samaje Perine has been, stealing some work from him. Wide receiver, I think Chase, Higgins are both fine tournament plays. I don't think I'd prioritize either of them in a cash game setting. Tight end, I don't think I'm going to mess with the tight ends. I mean, I guess if Hurst plays, he's a fair value play. We'll keep an eye on it. New England, Mac Jones, no thank you. Running back, so it sounds like Damian Harris is going to be back. If he's not, though, I really like Stevenson. I played Stevenson at 2% ownership last week. He absolutely smashed. It wasn't looking good at first because they started the game, I think, off with Pierre Strong in there. And I was like, oh boy, they're just not going to play Stevenson. But he came in, he smashed, and we have seen in games where Damian Harris is out, he plays the majority of the game. So if there's no Harris, I like Stevenson in both formats. Wide receivers, I mean, Jacoby Myers is 4.8. Obviously, you saw what happened last week with that play from him, but he's probably the only wide receiver I have confidence in for the Patriots. Everyone else, I'll probably pass on. Hunter Henry, yeah, if you need a cheap tight end, I mean, he has established himself as the tight end one, but not a super exciting play. Washington and San Francisco, so I'll probably pass on Taylor Heineke. Running back's going to be a split with Gibson and Robinson. Robinson more the early down back, Gibson more the passing down back. It depends on how you think this game flows. If you think Washington is playing from ahead, you can look to Robinson. They're probably not going to be playing from ahead, though. They're probably going to be playing from behind. If they do play from behind, Gibson is their pass catcher. So, like, I do have a small interest in Antonio Gibson for tournaments. Wide receivers, so McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, definitely playable. Jahan Dotson is cheap. He had that long touchdown last week. I mean, the positive with Washington is they play their main receivers basically the entire game. So all three are playable. Tight end, Logan Thomas is $3,000. He's still running a decent amount of snaps. He's only 3K. So, again, a lot of cheap tight ends look pretty similar. For San Francisco, I'm going to pass on Brock Purdy, but I do like Christian McCaffrey in both formats. He's projected for a good amount of ownership, but just a guy that, without Elijah Mitchell, is just like a bell cow. He had 26 carries last week, 6 catches and 8 targets. I think he's a great play in both formats. Wide receivers, so still no Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, they should be operating as the top, receiving targets, but do have some interest in Juwan Jennings and Ray McLeod for cheap. Juwan Jennings had 3 catches and 5 targets. Ray McLeod saw an increase in snap share. So those two guys are viable if you need cheap wide receivers. Again, Kittle, 5.3. He had a big week last week, 2 touchdowns, but I don't think we can expect 2 touchdowns on 4 catches again from him. And finally, Philadelphia and Dallas. So I think Gardner Minshew is playable in both formats. Because of the price point at 4.8K, he's really, really cheap. This game is being played in a dome. I know Dallas has been a solid defensive team, but yeah, I think if you need a really cheap quarterback, he's someone you could look to. Running back, I do have some interest in a contrarian Miles Sanders. He only had 11 carries last week, but they came out and said they need to get in the ball more. And with Jalen Hurts out, I actually think it's a boost to Miles Sanders, as weird as that sounds, because Hurts runs the ball a lot himself. And Minshew's not a running quarterback. So I think they're going to rely more on Sanders in the ground. I think he gets more opportunities and maybe even more involvement in the passing game. So as a contrarian running back play, I do kind of like Miles Sanders. Wide receivers, I think you can look to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith in tournaments. Again, in a game they probably will be playing from behind. I don't think either are going to be popular. I'll stay away from the slot wide receivers, but both the top wide receivers are in play for tournaments, and Dallas Goedert as well. He's back. Assuming no limitations, I think he's a good tournament play. So I like the Philly passing attack for GPPs. And finally, Dallas, I'm kind of just indifferent on Dak Prescott at 6-1. Don't hate him, don't love him. Running backs, please split between Zeke and Pollard. Both are fine tournament plays. We probably will see Pollard be over-owned. But yeah, they're going to get a good amount of carries. CeeDee Lamb at 7.5. I don't think picks up a ton of ownership. But he's gone for 20-plus fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. If you need a cheap wide receiver, Gallup is playable. Has been operating as a wide receiver 2, but still has a relatively low floor. And then tight end, I don't mind Dalton Schultz at 4.2. He's operating as a tight end 1. When Dak Prescott is their quarterback, he just sees an increased target share. So that's the breakdown, guys, for the Week 16 Saturday main slate. So if you have been enjoying the NFL content, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Really do appreciate all your support. I'll try to get a video up there for the 3-game Christmas slate as well. I'll see you guys in the next video.